Story takes us into the world of fertilizer manufacturing and the supply chain thereof. John Gallagher, our Washington correspondent, joins us now. John, what is going on with fertilizer, my friend?
Well, funny you should ask, Michael. No, this was all about trying to make fertilizer markets more competitive. So it grew out of there was this request for information from the Biden administration, and it grew out of a request to help bring the fertilizer prices down for the U.S. ag industry, particularly for the small and medium-sized farmers, and and as that kind of pushes down to the consumers as well. So USDA put together this like a request for comments, and one of the questions had to do with, in terms of making the market more competitive, was how does transportation sort of affect that competition and access to fertilizer too. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the comments came from the fertilizer companies themselves and their representatives, and it touched on, in terms of transportation, it sort of touched on every mode. Like railroad was a big seemed like one of the top concerns, because a lot of the building blocks that go into fertilizer, there's three main ones, but anhydrous ammonia is one of those, and most of that I think is moved by rail. So these fertilizer shippers are running into all these service problems that Joanna Marsh has been writing about on the rail side, and some of these shippers have even testified at the Surface Transportation Board. For example, they talked about how rail cycle times have been much worse this year due to all the congestion on the rails. And one of the shippers talked about how it's raised their costs to, like, they paid like $800,000 just from one U.S. railroad alone because of the congestion, and because it's they can't push as much fertilizer, so they have to store it where the producer is, and they don't have storage capacity, so that just raises their costs. They also talk about precision scheduled railroading, which Joanna has written a lot about as well. This is this concept to bring down operational costs that the railroads are putting in, and that also has the effect of reducing capacity, and it makes the railroads less flexible if you talk to these fertilizer shippers. So again, and that just increases their prices. So they're pushing for like reciprocal switching regulations on the rail side. That was a big thing. And basically, the bottom line there is it would just allow effectively open up more competition or open up more options for the rail shippers, which obviously the railroads don't want. On the trucking side, it was a lot of recommendations around hours of service, especially for these ag shippers, the farmers and the fertilizer shippers as well, where the short haul exemption has these. They want more. Actually, they want more flexibility in the short haul exemption in terms of bringing down hours of service restrictions. Size and weight was another issue that came up. They would like to see raise the federal weight limits for the federal 80,000 pound weight limit up so you can put more cargo on a truck and make it bring down the cost that way. And the other thing on the trucking side also was eliminating the cross-border vax mandate. This was the issue that caused all that those trucker protests in Canada late last year and early this year. Those are still in place, actually, on both sides. I think Canada, a few months ago, we reported that Canada had extended that. U.S. has it extended indefinitely, and although I heard that might change or may not change or might be extended again. But anyway, they said they were citing stats that said like a third of the I think it was the potash that is one of those building blocks. It is imported from Canada that the U.S. takes, and it goes into those northern tier states markets where across the Canadian border. But they were citing stats that a third of the truck drivers that were moving that stuff have been taken out of the market because of the vax mandate. I don't know. I didn't look into how much that's true, but several of them mentioned those stats, and so again, that's blowing up their costs. They're saying so that's something that they want eliminated. That's something that could be eliminated quick, And then they just talked about the Jones on the maritime side. They talked about the Jones Act, which we've written about before. How that in the coastal markets for U.S. fertilizer producers in the coastal markets, it makes those coastal markets more expensive because it's much cheaper to put that stuff to import that on a foreign flag ship because foreign flag ships less expensive, and it makes those markets less competitive if they were to rely on more expensive Jones Act coastwise shipping. So anyway, they kind of aired out all these, and they talked about infrastructure, more money for port infrastructure and more money for locks and dams to make the inland waterways more efficient too.
John, I want to touch on that hours of service exemption and the hours of service requirements, because the hours of service, especially when it comes to agriculture and petroleum goods, have been exempted for the last 2 years or so because of COVID-19 restrictions. And do we think that kind of those 2 years have been kind of the proof case that maybe some of these exemptions should be in place all the time because they work? Or is that 2 years, 2.5 years now of history and of things working with these hours of service exemptions not enough for the government still to say, you know what, maybe we should roll back a little bit on the restrictions?
Yeah, a lot of the trucking is saying, roll back those restrictions. It's a little bit contentious in Congress, and I don't know how much of that. Because there's also legislation in Congress asking for more rollback of that too, and so it would have to be like a combination of maybe passing a law or not. I guess if FMCSA could also make that more flexible. So you raise a good point, and there's also in those hours in the short haul exemption, there's like even within the short haul exemption, they have. Provisions about where during the harvest season those things are allowed to be more flexible, and they allow for, like, I think in the spring or the fall they loosen them there. So these guys were asking for make those flat out. Make the exemption flat out for some of these shippers throughout the season. So there seems to be even more little tweaks they can make in it to make those the short haul exemption even more flexible. So I don't know. So we'll see if that can actually pan out.
Yeah. So, John, what are some of the effects of this? Where's the supporting evidence to make these changes? Is it other than, hey, our costs have gone up? Is there effects on other groups or downstream where there's a groundswell that could say, hey, these are good ideas because we don't have wheat now or we don't have this now? Where are those impacts or negative impacts other than, hey, our costs went up?
Well, what I think it is, because the cost impacts are the big thing, and so I think what it is that all these issues that they were talking about, all these changes that they wanted to see in all these different modes, mm-hmm. it's coming from USDA, which is a little different, and the fact that. And a lot of these things, as we've talked about, the reciprocal switching and hours of service changes and the Jones Act, all these things have been looked at, and there's legislation in Congress now. I think what it is the fact that we have this other department, this whole other cabinet part looking at it. They could actually it might put more pressure on other departments like DOT, for example, to make these changes that have been looked at a lot, but nothing's sort of.
So kind of what you're saying is this is another and us too, right? I mean, because this has been looked at from other industries as well. So this is another straw on the camel's back, kind of these regulations that are hurting other the economy overall, I would say, or supply chain, right? Limiting.
Yeah, exactly. And the administration last year put out this executive order looking at all different sectors, all different competition sectors, and we saw in ocean shipping, not that it led directly, but it definitely had undergirding support for that Ocean Shipping Reform Act. So now that they put out this kind of call to now looking on the agriculture side and the fertilizer side, that this we'll see if that has the same, and like we just said, like USDA kind of getting into this game too, if that has enough strength behind it, or enough marketing leverage enough leverage to actually kind of influence, open up the conversation more, at least within the administration, and have a bigger push for changes.
Yeah.
John, it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. You said that they're collecting comments and that there's a comment period open. When does that close, and when can we expect any type of maybe legislative or decisions to come down for this?
Yeah, well, the comment period actually closed in July, and so this was not a proposed even an advanced rulemaking. It was more of a request for a comment. So, frankly, a lot of these times when they have these comments things, it either just kind of sits and nothing happens, or it moves directly into a proposed rule. So they have to have at least a few months to digest it before they get to the next step on it.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning, John. And check out John's stuff on freightwaves.com. Always interesting things. Thank you so much, my friend. You have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. Right now, we're going to toss it over to your first carrier update of the morning with Donnie Gilbert and Tony Mulvey.